Hey folks, and welcome to the Daily Ratings Podcast. It's a show where each week we sit down with Vincent Daly to get his thoughts on the latest movies he's been watching, both older films and new releases. And don't worry, there's no spoilers. Vince will give a brief review of the movie, share some thoughts, and of course, then rate the film. The daily ratings are always fair, honest, and most importantly, they're consistent. On today's show, Vince will be rating and reviewing Easter Parade, directed by Charles Walters, The Caine Mutiny by Edward Dmytryk, Soylent Green by Richard Fleischer, Come On, Come On by Mike Mills, and newly released Moonfall, directed by Roland Emmerich. So stay tuned and enjoy the show. Mr. Vincent Daly, how we doing, buddy?
Hey, tell me, boy, how's it going?
It's going real well. How was your week of movies, man?
Week of movies was a little all over the map. Folks at home, as you hear, we're having a hard time breaking even the 1980s, and then we jump forward to 2021 and new releases. So a little bit all over the map, but excited to talk about films nonetheless.
Yeah, I'm excited for the first two. I haven't seen them, and we're kind of on a Fred Astaire kick. Mm-hmm. So let's start with that. We're back in, 1948.
1948.
And this is Easter Parade, directed by Charles Walters.
Yes. So a fairly famous film in Fred Astaire's filmography. This was on my list because it was the one and only pairing that we have with Judy Garland of course, Wizard of Oz, the original Star is Born, and a few other things. Obviously, a very, very famous star in Hollywood. And just in the same way that I looked at Funny Face last week with basically saying, well, this is Audrey Hepburn's only film with Fred Astaire. Wanted to check this one out as well because I think when you think of Fred Astaire, he locks in with his partners, his dance partners, his showbiz partners, like a Ginger Rogers or something like that for many, many movies. I wanted to see why later on in his career, especially as Fred Astaire is flirting with the idea of retiring for a lot of these later years. I believe Blue Skies is the film that he says, I'm done with dancing.
Do you know some of the history of it, of why? Is it just literally...
I think it was physiological because he has, later on in his life, an inability to dance because of how much in his life, it probably was wear and tear on his bones. So literally just the
toll on his body, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I mean, this is ballroom dancing, but this is also very intense dancing, a very intense choreography in a lot of times. So,
absolutely.
So interesting. I wanted to, bottom line, this was on my list, how we jump even backwards, earlier than Funny Face, another one of those once and done type of movies. When it comes to this story here, very, very simple. 1948 was a different time. Basically, it is a very simple musical. Fred loses his showbiz partner and has to find another, and that's all you need. That's basically it. Let's talk about what I thought was a huge, huge highlight, which is Judy Garland herself. She really makes a great performance here. I can't say I've ever seen the original Star is Born.
Okay.
It's probably been forever since I've seen the original Wizard of Oz. We'll obviously be saving that for the Greatest Year special.
Absolutely. 1939.
1939.
So people know.
Exactly. And I think she's not only like breathtaking on screen, her voice, obviously, from her music chops, amazing. But I think what was so refreshing is she's really got some good comedy chops, which is not always the case in these older films. The comedy is very dated a lot of the time. In a lot of scenarios, we have certainly old films they're funny, but it's kind of, you're laughing kind of along with it. You're not really like gut laughing at it. And I'm not saying I was gut laughing at this film. It was more so I was just surprised how much of a goofball Julie Garland was comfortable making herself look in situations, and it was really refreshing for that reason, because everyone is so prim and proper, especially in even up into these late 40s type of movies, these musicals.
Yeah, and I like how the fact that it came off natural is great too.
And really works.
Yeah.
Genuinely funny.
That's
too.
awesome. That's awesome.
And that bit of a goofy character in her comedy performance actually does play a little bit into the storyline as well, of the type of showbiz roles she takes, despite having this wonderful voice. Really, I wouldn't say maybe operatic, but really beautiful, beautiful voice. But it was really great time to watch her on screen, because I don't have a lot of watch time with her, and not only that, I think she did a phenomenal job.
Oh, wow. Awesome.
What it boils down to with these movies, though, with Fred Astaire, especially when it comes to the fact that the storylines, a lot of the times, are very simple. A lot of the times, I am of the belief that the romance of the rom musical genre doesn't exactly break the mold. It's very simple, kind of circling the drain.
Right.
There's been even a critique of some romance films, even modern romance films that we've talked about semi-recently on the podcast. I think the standout segments for me are always going to be watching the choreography, and what we're here watching a Fred Astaire movie for is the dancing. Right.
And the dynamic with his main kind of cohort on screen.
Yeah.
And the big thing is not that a simple movie can't be amazing or good either. Or, sometimes with the older films, it's just, not only is it basic, but it's also not gripping in any sort of way either.
Exactly.
So what was the balance here with the choreography, with his chemistry and everything like that? Even though it was, like you said, pretty basic story.
Yeah, very basic story. And I'll definitely get into the critique of that story in just a second. I think the highlights here is, I'm happy to report that there are some real highlights in Fred Astaire's kind of dance catalog, if you will, his filmography of dance. A standout here is actually right in the opening segment. He has a really great dance number that he is that is based around stealing a toy in a toy shop from a child. Which is great. It's a great setup, and I think why it's so good in my kind of growing expertise of watching Fred Astaire movies, it translates his love of percussion. There are literal drums in the song and in this dance number, but his love of tap and percussion and using props in between to fill gaps in, if you will, the storytelling in his tap dancing. Really,
he's a master.
It's masterful, and he has a good standout. Definitely worth watching, if that's why you're watching Fred Astaire movies, like I particularly am watching Fred Astaire movies, this one is worth your time on that alone, because this one number right in the opening of the film is worth adding to that repertoire, that catalog of great Fred Astaire dances.
Okay, awesome. That's good to know.
He also does have a very technical one that is part of the show that they put on. I'm forgetting the song title now off the top of my head. I don't know why I didn't write it down. Nonetheless, though, it is an interesting number that he is dancing alongside of a big musical production behind him, but he goes into slow motion. And one of my top, and we'll be talking about this hopefully in some point in the podcast soon, folks, my favorite numbers of Fred Astaire are going to be the one where he combines his ideas of what he wants to do in the choreography and combining them with interesting film and cinematography, just or cool editing styles. The standout for me is always Royal Wedding with the tumbling set. In this one, we have a interesting slow motion dance sequence where I believe the trick is Fred is being kind of rear projected, almost like a background would be, but in front of the audience.
Okay.
And it kind of works and it doesn't, because if you really want to think about it, how is that happening in real life?
Right.
If you were to be sitting in the audience. But it is still Fred is always thinking creatively on how to bring something new, bring something fresh to obviously a very crowded musical movie market that is the late 40s and going into the 50s, you know? He has to freshen things up. He has to crack the mold a little bit. And that's where I think, you know, Fred really has no competition when it comes to that, because he's pushing the boundaries for himself. He's not being pushed by any of his peers or any of his competition that could be in that same category of masterful tap dancing and choreography.
Right, sure.
Which I respect a lot, because as an artist, clearly he's trying to always push himself forward, and we see that once again in a standout segment of this movie. Then.
Yeah, it's funny in the fact of almost being typecasted.
Yeah,
but it's also being typecast because no one else has your talent in the way that you do, and yet
right.
he, not that he reinvents himself with these films, but he just continues to he continues to keep the attention of the audience.
Yeah,
and it's different, even though it's the same. It's different, and that's pretty cool to keep that up after so many decades.
Absolutely, and especially where you look at a musical, and it's going to be so much about the music, so much about the musical performances. The fact that his tap dancing, I could describe like an action sequence almost, that it breathes life into the film.
It's a visual joy.
Exactly,
yeah.
exactly. There's something phonetic about it. There's something electric, you know. That is really what I think I love, and glad to see that this movie has some standouts to add to once again that catalog of, if I had to. Almost in a very clickbaity way, you know, the best Fred Astaire dances, you know. I've now watched so many films that I can say heads or tails, is this something worth your time? Is this something that is, worth watching for Fred specifically?
Right.
So I would say where I want to wrap things up is while the dancing and choreography is a big step up from something like Funny Face that we just watched last week, the romance is not a step up, and a much more simple plot. It's pretty much boils down to I thought there was one thing, and actually I'm in love.
Okay.
And it's very late 40s and early 50s in that way, which again I can't stress is. It's not necessarily a problem, but if my creative goal or my objective for how I'm rating movies is how much is this worth your time in the present day, in watching this, there's not much. It's lacking a dynamic nature for me to say, oh, this is something timeless. You can watch at any moment, and that's where some of these romance, when they grow weaker, it's not that the romance or the performances are bad, and not that I'm particularly knocking something that's just simple and straightforward. It's a musical. It's not really trying to be a drama in any sort of way. So I understand what it is. It's more so it's how it's executed and how I came off feeling from the plot. If that simple stakes, that simple kind of kerfuffle and the romance is going to be the whole plot.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, is that really worth it? That's where I'm kind of coming lukewarm.
Yeah, especially, again, and because we're in the here and now. We're sitting down and watching it now.
Exactly.
What is the feeling on this? Yeah.
So, to be fair, I think a lot of these movies have this aspect of weak romance, weak plot. And my ratings are always more about the musical aspects, the dance aspects, the choreography. But I think it was so especially light in this movie, and so especially Christ, just communicate, and the problem is solved.
Right.
It's like, oh, he's my dance partner, but I love him now. It's so theatrical and very needless. And really, despite how adorable, cute, gorgeous Judy Garland was on screen, I think again, it's a good movie, definitely above average. I'm not coming up much higher than that, so we're gonna go ahead and give really the classic Easter Parade a 67.
Okay, yeah, 67. Good movie, very good movie. I think that works. And as far as we have Fred Astaire, a pretty decent Fred Astaire flick as well.
Yeah, I think the main thing I want to get across is that there are segments in here to offset a very simple plot, and those segments are, him once again, just always adding to this repertoire of, every dance number is worth seeing in its own right, and that's I think the juice for the squeeze. I think that's what he gets out of being challenging himself creatively to always be advancing. You know, I mean, there's much more than just pushing the envelope.
And bring something different. Yeah, bring something different to the audience that they haven't seen before.
Exactly.
Yeah, absolutely.
Exactly.
All right, so 67, great score. Well, very good score for Easter Parade. We're going to jump ahead. That was 48, so we're jumping ahead now 6 years. So we're going to do the Caine Mutiny. And what made you go here?
Great question, Tom.
I was
A great question. I was asking myself this as well. So folks, I knew I was going to have to watch a big blockbuster, and that is, of course, Moonfall. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to have to keep up with blockbusters and new movie releases. Let me get something classic in there. This was on my list alongside of like Moby Dick with Orson Welles, and and this is, of course, Humphrey Bogart in the Caine Mutiny as well. Let me tell you though, Tom, I have never had a movie challenge me this much as a reviewer yet.
What? Challenge you in what way?
In me thinking that it's bad, and there's not much value here to watch it in the present day. I was having a existential crisis over this movie because I really enjoyed how the podcast and doing this has challenged what I watched, has challenged me in the type of how I'm looking at maybe a mundane movie or a movie that I as an audience member wouldn't see on my own.
Right.
So I enjoy how this podcast and doing this critically with you has pushed me in, basically taking this from a hobby to
something a little bit more professional. Yeah,
exactly. To kind of a creative endeavor and a challenge and a kind of a workshop in that way. Man, this movie challenged me in a way because it's Humphrey Bogart. It is an Oscar nominated. I could be wrong. It is a classic movie by every extent.
Right, pretty well known. I when you first said it, I didn't recognize it, and looking at it, it sparked something in my brain. Just like, okay, I had heard about this, but yeah, it's nominated for 7 Oscars.
Yeah, and I can't tell you, folks. I mean, you watch this film, and there is just like tonal whiplash. I did not like this film at all.
Wow. Okay.
And believe me, I like old movies. We've been talking about Fred Astaire movie. You know what I mean? It's not that I was kind of blocked out of this or anything like that.
Course.
Believe me, I was approaching it with the same eyes.
You're actually excited for it.
Exactly. Yeah, this was supposed to offset Moonfall, and by the end, I was hoping, I hope Moonfall's worse. Let me crack into it a little bit. So we have a very 50s movie, just extremely, extremely 50s. When I say tonal whiplash, this movie is probably 3/5 a comedy. It's very lighthearted. It's very chin up while you work, and it's odd because obviously by the title, The Caine Mutiny, I don't think it's too much of a spoiler, but there's a mutiny coming, folks. And Humphrey Bogart is in this, so it's very odd that the type of the genre mashing here, the combination of comedy, drama, and then what eventually is the good part of the film, which is this courtroom style military court martial. It's just like all over the place and just not worth it by my book. It made me question very heavily, and I was trying not to go too far back in the ratings. How many movies in the 50s do we really have, like 1950s, do we really have on the ratings? I was scratching my head. I know maybe obviously some John Wayne will be there.
Right.
I was.
But it's pretty light.
Yeah, exactly. It's pretty light because I have very early. I would say main driver being Fred Astaire.
Right.
A 70s, 80s, 90s, totally fleshed out. I think I have a very good. Especially when sci-fi is concerned, but. I was just scratching my head. I was just like, maybe I just don't like 50s movies. Maybe there's something here.
Well,
and I will say it is definitely going to be something that I'm going to be chipping away at slowly because I want to explore that for myself. Even.
Yeah, absolutely, and I think we can still fill out some 30s and 40s as well. But it's interesting. The 50s on its own.
The 50s specifically.
I think we should put some meat on the bone there.
Exactly.
I think it's definitely light. It's for sure light.
I have some old B movies like I think Day the Earth Stood Still and like some sci-fi old like
some classics. There's classics. But it would be nice to get into the 50s a little bit.
Exactly.
I mean, you picked a good one if you look at the credentials of it.
Exactly. And that's why this was on my list. It was almost like a no-brainer. I almost came into this movie thinking this was low-hanging fruit and saying, oh, okay, I'm going to have an easy, good movie to rave and rant about, to offset Moonfall that is coming up. Boy, was I wrong.
And just enjoy a good movie from the 50s.
Boy, was I wrong, Tom. This movie, for having a title with the word mutiny in it, is surprisingly lighthearted. We follow Van Johnson and Robert Francis, who are basically just newly recruited officers aboard a naval ship that is rarely deployed. It's like a minesweeper. It does see some action eventually, but it is very laid back and a sloppy ship. This results in like the goofy, lighthearted tone that everyone's still a hero. It is very 50s. It is very patriotic, and I don't have a problem with that. But again, it is such a tonal whiplash when we have almost slapstick humor being paired with what eventually turns into
war drama?
Not even a war drama, but like a really like by the books, brass tacks court martial. Like it is about law and it is about how a mutiny is conducted.
Right,
and
right.
Yeah, very odd. I would say again, if I have to pinpoint why this was tonal whiplash, it's how the comedy is layered in, and this is nowhere worse than with Humphrey Bogart himself. He plays a captain that is just flat out incompetent, flat out annoying to watch on screen, and believe me, like, I love Humphrey Bogart. He is the moment I saw him on screen, I almost got chills because it's like he's such a presence on screen.
Yes.
He's such a good actor. Definitely one of those classic actors that maybe there's not a lot of range, but like, wow, his one thing that he does is just so tremendously amazing. But this 3/5 of the movie that it's in this lighthearted military day in the life drama, almost like McHale's Navy a little bit, like, oh, these are the misfits,
Okay.
We're not getting deployed, so why, why take care of the ship? And it's these parts are just the worst. It honestly, it just plays out like a work environment with like a bad boss. Man, there's just no joy in seeing Humphrey Bogart acting here because it's not like he is this
competent human being.
Yeah, it's not like the anger or the conflict he has with the crew is driven by, wow, oh man, he is by the book and he is scary and intimidating, but he is the real deal. Mm-hmm. No, he's just incompetent. There's no joy in it because he just makes bad decisions and then just gets frustrated. It really reminded me of just like bad work environments through my through my life, and I was like, no, this is not great. And again, I can't stress enough that like Bogart's character, it's just annoying to watch on screen. I don't think there's enjoyment in watching such a cool character in how he talks, in how he carries himself, just kind of crumble in every scenario. And it really left a bad taste in my mouth.
Yeah, it's weird. And how much screen time did he eat up? Are we following him? I mean,
he probably, I would say of that 3/5, he comes in at 2/5.
Okay.
And then he'll pop out for a little bit, but then comes back in for the big finale. I would say he's in well over half of the movie.
Okay.
Because he is the focus,
right,
of the conflict on screen and what the crew has a problem with him over. So, I would say once we get into what I think the movie wants to be about, 2/5 of it kind of comes into this rule book military drama with court martial and everything. And this is where finally the movie gets good. And I would say if there's anything for its Oscar nominations and the legacy of this is one of the great Humphrey Bogart movies, I think it's in this court-martial segment because they are really down to the book of what are the actual rules of mutiny? What are the qualifications, the cross-examination that happens here? Throughout the entire time, I was saying, this is just Few Good Men. This is just,
okay,
you can't handle the truth as far as structure, or rather, vice versa. Few Good Men is like Caine Mutiny,
right,
in structure.
Yeah, huge parallels there.
Huge. And honestly, it's been. I don't even think Few Good Men is rated. So I have not watched it critically. So that's right. Now on my list. So don't get me wrong. Watching this film, though a little painful, has blossomed into is more ammunition for talking about new films. But these parts, this court-martial part has a lot going for it. Especially the realistic cross-examination and some great courtroom action, which, Tom, I'm not the biggest fan
I was going to make
of.
a comment on this. No, typically, you are not a fan of courtrum scenes.
Yeah.
I don't like them at all.
Exactly. And I think why it worked here is because, they're really getting down and dirty into, the actual legality of it. It was very realistic for that reason, which is something so rare in any kind of portrayal of a
and honestly,
scene.
that even could go more to the point of just like it also could sound really, really boring as well.
Right.
Not only is a courtroom drama scene, but it's also realistic. It's like, oh, geez, how dry is it? But if you're dealing with the military and dealing with something as far as a mutiny is concerned, you found yourself relatively entertained and
absolutely
okay, focused
I
in
can
on
appreciate the realism and maybe if I wanted to be cynical, I was so starved for something of substance, starved looking for where these Oscar nominations were coming from. It's a great razzle dazzle is my point though, and almost how we would have a razzle dazzle at the end of a big dumb action film. This courtroom scene is a razzle dazzle to distract you from the very, very non-landing, very dated 50s chin-up patriotic comedy. It's not even really that funny, but it is definitely comedic in tone from how the score is set up and the cues, the musical hits and stingers. That razzle dazzle is great, but it's just too late and honestly adds to the tonal whiplash of what the hell was this movie focusing on. I think
Well, I'm just saying because of the whole mutiny and everything like that, I think it makes sense to have an incompetent captain. But if you're watching, there's such a difference between it being incompetent or something like that on a ship that's causing for mutiny, and then just watching kind of. I don't want to say an idiot because it's just.
It is. Oh, it's for sure. It's office level idiocy. Like it is.
Really?
Yes, it's bad.
Okay.
And then what's terrible about it is like obviously has to can't be all comedy. There has to be then conflict with the crew. Bogart is just then so defensive about it. It feels like a toxic work environment, and it doesn't come off in a good way. I don't like it at all. It's terrible, and I'm sorry, Humphrey Bogart. Don't haunt me, the ghost of Humphrey Bogart. But yeah, like I said, this lighthearted tone. I think it is a product of safe '50s Hollywood. This is '54. I think it would be a little bit contradictory if I was to incorporate too much of a situational awareness of this film in its time. Again, we are viewing in the present day. How much is it worth your time in the present day? That is something to note, though, and definitely if I had to maybe counterbalance to why the juggling of comedy and seriousness in such a drastic way, this film would maybe get some Oscar recognition. That's definitely there. But I would still argue that it's just a total mismatch for the conclusion that the film gives us. Like I said, Humphrey Bogart's ghost, please don't haunt me in my sleep. We're going to give the Caine Mutiny a 39.
Ooh, boy.
I'm telling you, not worth it. And, controversial.
Yeah, the way you were talking about it, I was like, oh, we got a teens here? Do we have a Humphrey Bogart teens?
Thank God not.
Yeah. But yeah, going into it thinking you're going to be watching this historic classic or just something that Again, when you see the Oscar nods, you know what I mean? It'd be interesting
For
to see the
sure.
other films on that
For
year.
sure.
It's
And-
54 for itself.
And a good amount of universal praise too. I mean, this
Yeah,
landed
yeah.
on my film list probably around the time. I mean, this is going back to when you and I were just doing it for the sake of it.
Sure.
Probably around the time that I jumped into like a Casablanca or something like that and did a lot of classic movies like that. And I was looking for more standout performances from Bogart because he really is a presence on screen, but wasted. Wasted presence, wasted opportunity.
Okay, well, hey, at 39, that's okay. It's going to happen. I'm
You're trying to like coax me down. It's all right.
Yeah, okay, but 39%, for the Caine Mutiny. That's all
Not
right.
worth it.
Well, let's see how your week continued to get then. We kind of have another classic. I mean, I don't know if I would say this is more of a cult following than a classic, I guess you would say.
Yeah, I think so.
So we're in 1973 now, and this is Soylent Green.
Yes.
And what do we have? What was your reasoning for picking this one?
So yes, so the year is 2022, and this sci-fi is a very low-tech world plagued by critical overpopulation. I have a rotating list of when sci-fi is set in years coming up, and guess what? We are now in 2022. And this film stars Charlton Heston, plays a detective in this broken world that kind of basically just stumbles across cover-up after cover-up connected to the mass production of food related to this Soylent type of branding. I gotta say, especially we're public now. We're not just talking on the couch, Tom. This is not the current real company of Soylent. so no slander. We're totally separate. So it is completely different. But that's what landed this on my radar. This 2022 time period. And I'm always looking for the sci-fi gem. I am always on the prowl for
Well,
that.
it's so cool that it hits. I mean, it's 73, and it's talking about the year 2022.
Exactly.
It's like, that's awesome that, start the year out like this, really.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think the standouts are how low-tech the world is. It almost pushes the boundary of calling it sci-fi, and you could probably just call it like a dystopian type of detective story or dystopian noir, if you will. I think that's probably the standout for me because you could so easily make it a, we talked about THX not too long ago, and many films in this era of late 60s, early 70s, that it is a utopian world. There's a very realistic tone to Soylent Green in that overpopulation defines it. I believe right in the opening credits, it says New York is 400 million or something like that.
Okay.
Which obviously in 73 is outlandish. It's outlandish now,
Yeah.
but we'll see. maybe 2042. But a lot of time is put into highlighting how truly shitty the quality of life has become, and the constant, or rather the constant contrasting that the film does is with simple pleasures, basically putting our characters up against coming across maybe a little bit of meat, a jar of jelly, hot water, ice, and just being so stunned by it.
Okay.
I think it works and it doesn't. I think it's a little hammy in parts. I wouldn't say overacting, but I don't know. I don't know if it's
A little over the top.
Yeah, I don't know
Okay.
if it sticks. I guess I just kind of want to talk it through. I don't know if it sticks of having Heston come across a glass of ice and acting the way he does, that he would never encounter ice in his entire life, where the timeline just doesn't make sense like that.
Okay.
And believe me, I'm going granular because this movie is calling itself a sci-fi. So if it's trying to be that science fiction, I think it opens itself up to kind of critical examination like that. It is mostly visually striking and really works best when you have scenes of hundreds of extras. Yeah, it's just selling that theme of overpopulation, selling that scrappy, struggling quality of life that everyone is living. It's not so much in when they're drawing contrast to, some people have it good and look how rare this is. That's where it doesn't work for me. Where it does work is just how crappy the lows are, because I still think it is visually striking to see on screen, especially in '73.
Right.
Live action sets of hundreds. I mean, like probably a good 400 people in this one.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's actually really cool.
I think that's where it stands out, and definitely probably the biggest highlight of watching Soylent Green today, where very easily that could be so outclassed with modern technology,
sure,
CGI.
yeah.
So acting is real odd, though. I just think, I don't know, maybe I got to open my eyes a little bit with old acting. I can't put my finger on this one. I don't really understand the rules of cops in this world.
Okay.
Which is important, because if Heston is going to be this detective noir, I think we need to understand the rules and boundaries of our characters. And it seems way loosey-goosey. He will lose his mind over something that conflicts with his view of justice, but also sleep with a murder victim's wife. I don't quite understand the back and forth of it, but nonetheless, I mean, it's where this is worsened is the performances that Heston has to bounce off of. Charlton Heston himself is doing a great job. We have one other character, his kind of a father figure. I think the character's name was Sol Roth.
Sol Roth by Edward Robinson.
Yeah, I don't know the actor,
right,
but
right.
I'm sure he's been in a good amount of stuff. Just every classic actor, honestly,
right,
has
right.
been. But I think everyone else, the word that comes to mind is flat performances. He's not having this volley. He's not having he's giving a lot in sequences and just
it's
a
not
lot
getting a return or anything
exactly.
like that. So it wasn't that the acting was necessarily, well, maybe it was bad acting. I don't know. For some reason, I was thinking that this might have like a weird goofiness to it because of some things can be over the top or something. But
Sure.
you weren't quite getting that. You were just getting like these characters are falling flat.
Yeah, if anything, I wish there was some overacting to sell the type of contrast that the movie wants to clearly
Of like
sell.
just hysteria and
Yeah.
also just like complete ruins. And my boy's in this too.
Who's your boy?
The Rifleman. Chuck
Oh, really?
yeah, starring Chuck Connors.
I had no idea.
Yeah,
Wait, what-
Tab Fielding or Felding or something like that.
Oh yes, he's Muscle. Actually, you know what? That makes sense because they give him a good amount of action sequences.
Oh, that's good. That's good.
Chuck, I don't know. Usually, I'm quicker with that stuff. I look out for that stuff. That's great. But yeah, I think there's just there's a lack of volley. It's a shame because I think Heston is selling the ideas of this world. The extras, oddly enough, are selling the ideas of this world.
Right.
It's the secondary performances, the
supporting roles,
performances. Yeah. I think maybe this could be remedied by a little bit better communication about the rules of this world. And again, I'm stressing this so much just because there's some things that our characters do that are just jarring and I don't think make sense even in the context.
This crazy world.
Exactly.
In this crazy world, still doesn't work.
Exactly. Yeah, for instance, cop law enforcement, they have a lot more power in their agency. Just certain things that are done, it just makes me scratch my head. It's like, well, this doesn't even feel like it's set up in the rules of this world. But again, the reason why I'm sticking so much on this is that if you're going to be crafting a environment, if you're going to be crafting a reality to science fiction, I think the logic of the world has to make sense because that's basically your hook to caring about the characters.
If anything, once when you set it up, you stick to it.
Exactly.
What are the rules of this world? And once you set that up, I mean, if you're breaking that, that's not a good thing.
Yeah, and maybe more balanced is it's just that it's weak. Has weak commitment to it, but
still that doesn't work. Then
exactly.
It's taking you out of it. I mean, if you're scratching, there's moments where you're kind of taking you out of the film, and you're just like, okay, wait, so the cops are not what I thought.
Exactly.
That's not good. You don't want that.
Exactly, especially when there's concepts of state delivery of food and dealing with overpopulation. There's things that the film definitely wants to tackle. It's not
right.
It's not avoiding it by any means. So I just thought it was interesting because again, it was challenging me as now in this role to review films and critically analyze them. I'm not bringing this type of critique up with Easter parade. I'm not questioning the logic of it. It's with sci-fi specifically, and it goes back to last week or 2 weeks ago with Finch, that, same kind of weak commitment to its rules of the world. If it's a sci-fi story, you have to establish it, and that is the backbone of how our characters operate.
Yeah, no, 100%, absolutely.
Yeah. So, really, when it comes down to it, I think overall this has some very good detective work, and in ways... could maybe be seen as a proto-neo-noir like a Blade Runner. Obviously, it's nowhere near to the tech of Blade Runner, but has similar vibes that... he's kind of, he's law, but he's also kind of a grifter, and he's kind of, moving, throughout the city and tasting the local fare. It has Blade Runner vibes for sure.
That's pretty. I mean, that's pretty damn cool.
Yeah,
honestly, just the fact that you're saying where you're saying, oh, this one doesn't have the tech, obviously, is Blade Runner. The fact that we're in a futuristic world. And you're saying the tech is very low. That's cool that it didn't detract from it. It seems like you weren't bothered by the fact that there was lack of tech.
Absolutely. And if anything, there's a highlight because this film goes in such a different direction for that. It's
pretty cool, yeah.
Yeah. I think that's really the sole highlight of why I think this movie is worth watching in present day, because it could so easily be plastic white furniture and, little blocks that are food and very Star Trek style design to everything.
Yeah, it's true.
That's there, but the emphasis is put more on just extras, really dingy sets, very overcrowded. And again, it's all in service to sell this concept of just critical overpopulation is the sci-fi horror or the sci-fi dystopia.
Yeah, very cool. I like that. Yeah.
Yeah. I think overall, though, I mean, as cool as the concept is, it kind of... flubs the execution because there's just weak stakes. The punch and the shock of this film, I think, has also really diminished significantly with time. While I enjoy it as a heavy-handed sci-fi fan and really enjoying watching older sci-fi, good or bad, because I like watching the building blocks and how they were working creatively to tell new stories in the late 60s and early 70s. Unfortunately, this leaves me with a weak recommendation to watch in 2022. We will go ahead and give Soylent Green a 46.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was hoping for a little bit better. Yeah.
There's a lot of cool stuff here, but... ultimately,
the execution isn't there.
Yeah.
And
it really ends out of nowhere. Of course, no spoilers, but like, I was like, what?
Okay.
So.
Yeah, that's a shame. And maybe if the act, I mean, when you have, it's great that Charlton Heston was great, but if that's all that is good to be seeing, if he's the only good actor, or good, if he had no decent supporting role to have that ping pong, that back and forth kind of, that drops it off immediately.
Absolutely.
So, all right. So 46, kind of middle of the road for Soylent Green.
Yeah.
Topical in its own right, though, because again, it's a 73 movie talking about 2022, which is always fun.
Yeah.
Always fun. But
I'll continue to watch these as the years progress like that, But, really, what I'm looking for is the rare gem. I'm looking for the Solaris that I just, I find out of nowhere.
The original one, by the way.
Yeah,
exactly.
Not the George Clooney one. But like an old sci-fi like that I'm finding is just like, wow, how did I not know about this? And more importantly, this is, a top tier film.
Right.
So.
All right, cool. All right, so 46 for Soylent Green. We're jumping really far ahead here. We're in this year, not quite in theaters. It's out of theaters, but it's a 2021 release, and the movie is Come On, Come On.
Yes, another black and white film this year, in the year of black and white.
Yeah.
We, of course, had Macbeth, we had Belfast, and even actually a re-release of Nightmare Alley in theaters in black and white.
Oh, I was not aware of that, really.
Yeah. I thought it was interesting.
So it definitely is a topical type thing going on,
Yeah. Granted, two of those are coming from A24. This is an A24 release as well. Maybe they're just... They hit it big with Lighthouse and like, all right, we're going in on it. This is what we do now. Just something to note because I think, some people could not like the black and white aspects.
Sure.
Unlike Lighthouse or even Macbeth, not seeing really a huge reason for this to be black and white creatively. I did really love this film. I am a sucker for this type of story. This is Joaquin Phoenix playing a interview storyteller. Reminded me of almost like an NPR or a Snap Judgment, style of like storytelling through audio logs.
Like radio
yes,
journalists. Yeah,
exactly. And his character is a little bit broken. Honestly, almost every character is a little bit broken in this. I watched this before Caine Mutiny, and it was just so funny to go to Caine Mutiny, and then like everyone's just like, up, chin up, and where like everyone has depression in this film. But Joaquin Phoenix is estranged with his sister and ends up reconnecting with her through his nephew, through her son. The performance here is right where I want Joaquin. It is melancholy. I enjoy him in this type of role a lot. I am a huge fan of the Spike Jonze film Her, which I feel has probably the closest vibe to how Joaquin is just kind of fighting some demons and whatnot on the inside, but still moving
that's
forward.
Joaquin. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
he has that vibe about him.
Might be the dude.
Like,
it might just be Joaquin.
Compared to the Master, also, like...
Oh, sure.
Yeah, okay.
So, yeah, I just really like what he's doing here. It feels great, especially after the return of Joker, which was I love Joker. I don't know. I want Joaquin doing roles that I feel like he wants to do, and this felt like that. At least from my audience perspective.
Yeah, could you say that it matched the melancholiness that Joker had as well, or no? It's different and better.
Different and better for sure.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, because Joker I just think was stylized for its melancholy, where this is more so trying to deal with the actual drama and the stakes behind these.
Much
characters.
more real world as well. Yeah, okay,
yeah. Much more playing that out, but insane. I feel like we've been talking about kid actors way too much in the last 6 months.
Yeah, it's just been coming up a decent amount.
The kid here, I believe it is Woody Norman. Is that right?
Woody Norman, yeah.
Woody Norman, yeah. I wrote that down, but it didn't sound right when I read it there.
Good old Woody.
Good old Woody. He is playing a extremely eccentric role. This is very challenging. At first, it wasn't sitting well with me at all. My no-go kid radar was going off.
Okay.
I think this role even challenges the rule right on the nose of what I want a kid actor to be. I want real kids. I do not want kids acting, if that makes sense. I want Florida Project. I want kids being kids. I don't want kids playing roles. This very plainly is a kid playing a role. It is a kid acting, and not only that, a very eccentric type of role. I mean, the child in this, Buddy, I believe is his character. His name is. It's Buddy and Johnny, I think.
He's Jesse.
Jesse. It is grating. There's a lot there that if you're not into kid actors. And I, oddly enough, I would almost include myself in on this. This is kind of walk on eggshells approaching this one. I will say, though, it sold me by the end. I think the credit goes to just the balancing act of a lot of factors. Go ahead, though.
So I would say flirting with not being good because the acting wasn't good, or because it's weird to see a kid acting the way he was. Like the essential, what was it that was bothering you? Was he a bad actor?
No, I don't think the kid was a bad actor. They strategically cut away from when he ever has to cry. We never see him like really cry. Okay, which I think was smart.
But what was that like you said, the first half or something like that? What was gnawing at you? What was
the role is so out there. This kid, the character itself,
right? Okay, gotcha.
It would be grating if an adult was playing it.
That's what I was getting at. Is it the actor or the character?
The character. Okay. Yes, and that in combination with having to be performed as from a kid. Mm-hmm.
It's a lot to ask for.
Yeah, I was watching it and I was like, I think this works, and thankfully by the end, I believe it does work.
Okay,
but there is a little bit of some buy-in that you need in the beginning, some startup, if you will, before you're really attached to it. And
we're prepared for it now that you're just saying that. Maybe people that are going to go watch this afterwards can at least be a little bit prepared. Be prepared even quicker. Yeah.
I think there's a lot of praise to this film, and we'll get into where I really do. Again, like I said in the beginning, I love this film. It's just that I have to be realistic and kind of give almost, if you will, kind of a trigger warning to bad kid acting. It's just that the character is so out there, and again, if I have to give credit. I'm amazed that it works in the first place, but I think it gives credit to an equal split of director, script, casting, and kid. It's that kind of it's a 4-part melding of everything that could work and definitely everything that could have gone horrifically bad and sunk this movie.
And easily, too.
Very easily.
Yeah.
Because, again, this kid is just playing such a intentionally grating role.
Yeah.
Very, very demanding, a little tough, but pays off at the end. A quick note, I love how texting is presented. This definitely is more of a brownie point for me. I am always a fan of watching how texting is portrayed on screen. Ever since watching House of Cards, an original run of that, I love seeing how different directors tackle how...
Yeah. It's funny. It's something new to deal with in the past 10 or 15 years.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I always appreciate it when it's not just reverse shot of phone and then screen reaction. We want them on at the same time.
Mix it up.
Exactly. So it was a plus for me, and I'm not saying it's groundbreaking, but it proposes a very simple solution that we just have almost closed captioning of the text message on the bottom. But it's just so simply communicated. You get it right away. And not only that, probably the most important point why I follow this as a film watcher is how do we present texting with acting on screen? Let's not let's have how it is in real life. You read a text message, your face is reacting to whatever you're reading. That is never going to fly with reverse shot. We need to see that first reaction while still communicating, obviously, what the character is reading. So a little bit of a brownie point there. I would say a big quarter of this film, and where I come into a very positive rating on this, is that this film is interwoven with the interviews with real kids throughout the story, with Joaquin playing his character in this. I would say if I wanted to be, really get my knives out and really be critical, to be fair, this structure is ripped directly from Nomadland.
Okay.
The type of... We have a story that's interwoven to real characters, or rather, real people in interview segments specifically, and then our main lead acting within those interview segments as our character. I mean, I wasn't too hot on Nomadland for a couple reasons, but this is ripped directly from it. I think why I am accepting of this and not calling it a ripoff, not calling it, just kind of stealing the glory of Nomadland, I would really argue that it is more acceptable because it's a format for storytelling. I think we probably will see a few more of these in the coming years where there are real-world people interwoven in our story through some sort of interview segment.
And is it real-world people in interviews, and they're part of the story? Is it real-world pretending to be real-world? It sounds weird, but we also did recently in the past few weeks When Harry Met Sally.
And
there's those real-world...
You are always surprising me. Wow, good callback. He's paying attention.
I turn on the mics and I pay attention. That's my job here. But you know what I mean? That was just like interviews of real people thrown in the film. Was it
Excellent
like this?
Callback.
Or was it real people acting, but they're... You know what I mean?
No, it's definitely... Well, I mean, Harry Met Sally was real people, but I think there was too much of a punctuation point to those interview segments. And if I remember, I was kind of lukewarm on their inclusion. They're cute, but not really.
You liked it, but
adding.
you were hoping. I think with Harry Met Sally, you were saying they could have dropped in the real people, whatever they were talking about with the real world things. They could have dropped it into the storyline better to fit what was going on. Yeah.
Implemented it where that is there. That is certainly with Nomadland as well. I think where it is a step above Nomadland, though, to be fair, a little bit ripping off of its style, is that those interview segments in Nomadland was just for the curiosity of Frances McDormand's character with people living the life.
Okay.
Where Joaquin's character in this he's an interviewer. So it makes sense that we see him in the day in the life doing these interviews. And not only that, the kids' stories, the children speaking about the many different topics that are covered in these interview segments, they weave into the drama so wonderfully.
So it's very fluid almost throughout the film. The way
Exactly.
the way it comes in and out. Okay, very cool.
I think it stands above Nomadland again, despite full credit to Nomadland
whatever.
for cracking that.
When did Nomadland come out? Late 2019?
No, I think 2020 on the dot. So
Maybe they were being filmed roughly at the same time. I wonder, did it
Could be.
take?
It could be.
Who knows? But yeah.
yeah, and on the shoulder of giants,
Right.
everything is on. Everything is inspired, or everything is. We're all hacks,
Right.
But yeah, I think. Why I think it stands out better is, again, the particular implementation that this is tying into Joaquin's character specifically, and that it pushes the boundary that the stories that are being told interweave with the themes of what our characters now, our fictional characters, are going through. So
Cool.
very interesting. And I'll wrap things up with saying, overall, I'm a sucker for this type of story, this type of father and son figure, Kramer versus Kramer, marriage story. I'll bridge over to video games for a second, even like the newest God of War. I really love the father figure story, and specifically a drama built around the struggle of raising a child where you're not experienced with that, and there was a lot of melancholy that added to it. I think this movie doesn't have too many twists and turns, but it is a flavor that I wanted all the way through, and of course Joaquin is at the helm of that, and really enjoyable to watch in his performance. So we will go ahead and give Come On an 81.
Wow.
Saving the day, saving the week.
81's really good.
Yes,
really good.
And just to plug a little quickly, we obviously had the Oscar nominations come out. I was pretty proud of myself for 7 out of 10 Best Picture nods already covered on the podcast.
It's pretty good.
Yeah.
I'm excited to go through those other 3 then.
I honestly thought this was going to be one of them, and no Oscar nod. So
that's weird.
Yeah.
Was he on there for Best Actor or no?
I don't think so.
Wow. Okay.
So
81, very, very good.
yes. Absolutely worth your time. And again, maybe a touch of bias there because I really love this type of story. But again, I think what it does to build on that format from Nomadland, definitely worth your time.
Very cool, yeah. And it's great, an hour and 49 minutes as well. I mean, it's just a great, it's pretty bite-sized and easy to consume. And it's kind of funny with the black and white. I mean, Belfast we got a great score. This got a great score. Macbeth got a great score.
Despite what I said, maybe I'm a sucker for for black and white.
Maybe A24 is onto something here big time. Very cool. Okay, so 81% for Come On. That's awesome. We have one more film left. It's our film that's in theaters now. But before we do that, we're just going to, take a pause here and mention that we are on the value for value model, which basically all of you listening, we do not treat you as listeners, you are producers. And the way you produce is you go to thedailyratings.com, you can go to the donate tab, and then through any amount of donation that you want, you're helping produce this podcast. Vin and I host the podcast, you all help produce it. And it's not just the podcast, it's the site as well. If you don't listen to us very often, but you're constantly checking the site and you're saying, okay, Rotten Tomatoes give it this. Let's see another score here. Let's go somewhere else because Rotten Tomatoes kind of sucks, And if you're going to the site, visiting it and using it, if you could, just give some kickback to us and help produce the site. That's why we call it the value for value. Whatever value you are feeling you're getting from it, you can put towards a monetary donation for us. You can write in a little note as well. We will read it on the next podcast during this producer segment. It's awesome. It builds a relationship with you. It builds dialogue with you, and it's a good time. And for all those who do help produce the podcast, for all you producers out there, we thank you so much. We love you. And again, we're having a good time doing this, and we're building something special. So again, it's at dailyratings.com. You head to the donations tab. It's whatever amount of value you feel that you're getting from us.
And we want to hear from you, most importantly.
Absolutely, yeah. It's a direct line to you and a direct line from you to us as well. So it's pretty great. And all right, with that, we're going to move on here to our in theaters now. So, it's something that the Caine Mutiny couldn't even bring up or do better for Vin here. But, okay, so this is our new release. It's in theaters. This is 2022 release. It is Moonfall, directed by Roland Emmerich. And Vin, what do we have here?
Yes. So Moonfall. Tom, let me tell you, Like I said before, I really have been falling in love with how the podcast has challenged me to watch new things that I normally wouldn't watch. Folks at home, I mean, when we were doing this, just for the sake of it, this was just me watching what I wanted to watch no matter what. So it was a lot of sci-fi, things like Fred Astaire and whatnot. It was just where I wanted to go with it. I think.
Are you saying you weren't excited about Moonfall? I'm picking up that you weren't excited to see this film.
A tinge of regret having to watch Moonfall. I bring this up because I would not be caught dead watching this movie. It's been a very long time since I've seen something so dumb.
Wow.
So much money put into it. It is something else. And I mean, maybe why I'm bringing this up in this way is maybe if you're trying to do a drinking night with the boys, and maybe you go out and you want to just see just an intentionally bad movie. Maybe this hits it there.
Oh yeah, I mean that sometimes you need those films.
Yeah, sometimes, but for the most part, I would say coming out very, very cold on this film. The plot is the moon is falling. That's the story. That's the story, folks. This is like Independence Day meets 2012. It is...
Which Roland Emmerich did.
Both, yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, so it really is a blending of Roland Emmerich's style of space-based disaster movie. We have your blockbuster science-led action movie, and then throughout the film we have sprinklings of geo-destruction type of disaster movie. I would say if there is any place to give a bit of praise is in the CGI, because I think there are some breathtaking moments, especially as we splash into that geo-destruction, but I'll get to it in some of my my closing notes. Take a look back at Day After Tomorrow. Take a look back at 2012, and I don't think those movies stand up anymore. So it's just a matter of a ticking clock for these type of effects.
Right, right.
I'll return to some of those notes. Let's talk about. Oh boy, the script's so bad. Right from the word go. I mean, wow, we have just god-awful acting. Halle Berry, terrible.
Really?
The guy from The Conjuring, laughable. Children actors, bad. Not like come on, like just bad.
Never good thing. Yeah.
I think it really falls on the script. The lines that they have to deliver. Ooh, my God. The pacing is just so breakneck. The movie has just got no time to waste. It is just like...
It's moving quick?
It's
moving. 2 hours and 10 minutes long.
Every line that they deliver is like an entire arc of a character condensed into one. It's so...
lazy.
It's lazy.
And shallow.
It's just... keep it moving. It's very shallow.
Roland Emmerich wrote it, too. Or co-wrote.
Oh my God.
What's going on?
It seriously feels like an AI wrote this. I know I said that about something recently. It feels like if you've ever seen some of those internet like autocomplete type of thing, or maybe your Gmail that autocompletes. It feels like they autocompleted this script on every line. You
think you would be getting better at making these types of films? They're all the exact same.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Independence Day, Godzilla 2000, 2012, Day After Tomorrow. These are the same exact films.
I know.
You think you'd be getting better.
And maybe...
I hope... I mean, Stargate, he's remaking Stargate.
Is he really?
Out. Yeah.
Wow. And we talked about Stargate not too long ago, too. And, I was pretty positive on it. Maybe there was some nostalgia glasses on. But, I think, I can't stress enough that this film is nothing new, despite very shiny and big blockbuster, money behind it, If anything, it feels dated in its kind of disaster movie style.
Halle Berry can be good sometimes.
She can. She's definitely not in this one. No, but that's the thing. I wouldn't blame Halle Berry. That's where I'm putting emphasis on the script, because everyone's bad. I don't have too much watch time with
Patrick Wilson.
Yes. He's in the Conjuring movies and whatnot, and he was laughable. I don't understand. I was like, wow, I don't think I will watch the Conjuring movies now because he's that bad. I think it has to be a little bit more of a blanket criticism to the script because no way are all these actors just giving that much of just an ass performance.
Okay,
It
okay.
really is bad.
Okay,
it
gotcha.
really is bad. What I can't stand about this film, what I hate about it so much, is it goes through such lengths to make the characters have just this like these family stories and be broken, and while the side stories are meaningless leading up to a point. I was almost saying, like, why am I so dumb? How did I not see this coming? Of course, while they're up in space, the side stories, the family stories are there to give us fodder, emotional fodder, for while the geo-destruction disaster movie is happening on Earth.
Right.
And again, I can't stress enough, visually, kind of stunning. I think it's going to be dated after a while, but it's so meaningless because I never cared about these family plots to begin with, and in no way is anyone in goddamn danger.
Right.
You know, it's terrible. It's just so awful. It's just meaningless and serves as fodder for a cutaway when the plot gets up its own ass in the third act, because if I told you, wow, the plot of Moonfall gets overcomplicated, you're like, are you sure? Yeah, it gets overcomplicated in the third act against all odds, if you can believe it. Let's talk about our main guy. What is his name again? Patrick what?
Patrick Wilson.
Patrick Wilson. He is such an idiot in this. For an astronaut, I was like, is this guy an astronaut or not?
It's a very good point.
I mean, it's just ridiculous. Halle Berry is a joke. I legit laughed 4 times on her line delivery.
Really?
And not comedic. Like it's
just that bad. It's that bad.
It's so bad. And you know, again, the supporting cast, the family tie stuff, I'm not going to talk about too much because it really is fodder is the word. It's just to have a perspective of, you know, boots on the ground while the disaster is happening. Our main third is the guy from Game of Thrones, and much like Godzilla versus Kong, we now have a wacky conspiracist character in our main way that we're, why is this becoming a theme?
Because it's how long is Alex Jones
going to
be?
Exactly.
I mean, it was a new Spider-Man movie,
which I thought it was cool in Spider-Man. It's now being overused. You know, the Alex Jones.
I think it's just like, how long are you gonna milk? It's one guy. It's just like he's not in the news all that much. It's like, really?
Yeah.
I mean, it goes all the way back to Godzilla vs. Kong.
Yep. That's exactly what I mean. It feels like we're probably going to get like a yearly character like this.
I think it's every single somewhat apocalyptic film or anything like that. Any film where a city is being destroyed in some sort of way, you need to have some sort of conspiracy theorist Alex Jones guy now.
That's a cover up, or
it's just like, very good. Been there, done that, and can we get something more interesting now?
Exactly.
It's laziness.
And when the reveal of it is that, maybe they were a little right all along, it's just like, okay, well then I don't care. I don't care. It's ridiculous. The most hardcore product placement for a car I've seen in a while. This is a straight up Lexus commercial.
Okay.
One of the characters
make
goes,
money somehow. I don't think they're gonna get it in the Blockbuster.
One of the characters goes, let's throw this shit into hyperdrive, or let's throw this into overdrive, and there's just a lingering shot on slowly, like in this chase sequence, slowly the character's fingers going on the knob inside the Lexus dashboard and going from like cruise to comfort to sport, and then he takes off. Like it's just so bad.
It's just a commercial.
It's
just
so
a commercial.
Bad.
Spoiler alert.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, folks. Hope the spoilers aren't too.
Spoiler alert for
hidden Lexus.
Yeah. I know we were all looking forward to the Lexus post credit sequence. I where I want to end talking about this is really talking about special effects in these movies. It is certainly flashy. It is certainly big, and I won't lie. I mean, I think the design and the creativity to the premise of the moon falling, there's some cool incorporation of science and there's elements there's definitely care put into the type of destruction that would happen from this, water rising and crazy tides and things like that, and there's some good thought there. I don't want to dig into it too much because obviously there's probably a massive CGI team behind this, pouring their hearts into this and making this,
definitely,
and have totally no control over what's going on here, but when it comes to these disaster movies, and if anything, it's perfect that we're talking about this in February, the oh holy of Fred Astaire Februaries. But let's talk about a classic disaster movie called The Towering Inferno with Fred Astaire. The Towering Inferno, historic film about a building that's burning down that is close to 3 hours long, very self-indulgent, huge cast, and all about the disaster. This was pre-podcast, but we talked about The Towering Inferno, Tom, and not too long ago. And my same belief with any kind of disaster movie as it comes out. It is only a matter of time until the special effects run out. So if I'm going to if anyone is going to defend Moonfall and say, hey, these special effects, that is what you're watching for. You're not watching for the characters, you're not watching for the script, you're watching for this destruction, this visceral, that's going to run out. That is going to get very old fast. And
well, it's like jingling keys in front of a baby.
Yeah.
The baby's only going to be so happy about it for so long.
It's going to wear off. Yeah. Or there's going to be a next greater version of it, possibly even directed by Roland Emmerich.
Right, exactly right.
He's going to outdo himself. And
That's
guess
exactly
what? Now
right.
This is outdated. I think why I want to bring something like that up with The Towering Inferno is that we watch the movies in the present day, and there's going to be a time where the only positive about this movie, being the CGI, is going to fall by the wayside. And what is left? What is left is a terrible, terrible movie with a script that is so unintentionally funny because of how laughably bad it is.
Garbaggio.
And I can't stress enough whether it is now, the CGI is pretty, but definitely to have a consistent perspective on disaster movies, and this movie specifically, moving forward into the future, maybe, hopefully future-proofing my rating of this movie, I really do not think Moonfall is worth an ounce of your time. We will go ahead and give it a 14%.
Woo, we got in the teens. Mm-hmm. Wow. Okay, boy, oh boy.
I told you, it was all over the map.
Maybe if anything,
week.
as CGI, as it looks worse and worse as the years go by, maybe the film actually gets better because it just turns into a stupid movie.
Right, it becomes more of a comedy than anything.
So what you're saying is you still didn't find, as you said when you watched Soylent Green, searching for that lost... what's that other big movie, that was sci-fi movie that we missed?
Yes.
So this wasn't on the heels of a 2001 or anything like that.
No, certainly not. Unfortunately, believe me, I was hoping, but
well, this is a bad movie for Roland Emmerich, 14%.
Yeah, I mean, granted,
that's hilarious. How bad
I haven't
that is.
Critically watched a 2012 or Day After Tomorrow, but
maybe we'll do a Roland Emmerich special.
Oh boy. Heaven forbid.
Oh boy, okay. Oh boy is right.
I think the main win that comes from here is that I was just so immensely pleased that in no way this movie was better than the Caine Mutiny.
Yeah, I was going to say, so the Caine Mutiny, all in all, it was much better.
It was, absolutely.
It was a step up.
A significant step up.
Wow.
For sure. But I was just happy that I didn't have to do the unthinkable. And
wow, okay, so ending it with a 14% throw, Moonfall. Vin, is there anything else you'd like to add, or should we roll credits on this?
Listen, no joke. I as much as I poke fun at it, I think my enjoyment here is that I really wouldn't be caught dead watching this film. This is not, even with the sci-fi dressings, this is not my type of film. There is enjoyment in in just the same way that I need to have perspective to call something good, I need to flesh out the bad, and this is about as worse as it comes.
Yeah. It doesn't get much worse than this.
It definitely doesn't. So there is some enjoyment in there. Don't get me wrong. So producers, you want to throw some bad stuff my way, I will take it on the chin. But the Moonfall. It was something I was dreading the entire week.
You were
dreading
I
was texting. Yeah, I was texting you about it.
You were displeased with having to do it. Yeah. And that goes back to to you producers. It's sometimes we do 5 films a week, and sometimes Vin is. I mean, legit. You're not just sitting. You don't quit going to theater with your notepad and then you're in.
Right.
I mean, Dune you saw multiple times before.
Yep, absolutely.
Matrix you made sure you saw 3 or 4 times before giving the review. Like there is absolute care put into these numbers. Yeah. And even if you don't agree with you can't say that it's just a throwaway or you're being bought out like Rotten Tomatoes.
Oh, sure.
It's just like the numbers that you give, there's a reason behind the numbers. You do take not pride into them, but you take it very, very seriously. And for everyone at home, for the producers listening, like that's what your money is going towards. It takes some time, and it definitely takes a little bit of money as well to do this.
Yeah,
and a lot of time, and it's helping us. We're having a good time with it, and what you guys are doing for us, that giving back that you're doing to us, helping produce this. That's what you were all doing. You're helping this along so much. You're giving us a reason to continue it and everything like that. Because someone needs to do the 14%ers, and I don't want to watch them. You don't want to waste your time doing it.
Definitely not.
Everyone listening out there, and so if you could go to the donations tab on Daily Ratings, that way we can keep Vin in pain and keep the 14. Keep the 14%ers. Go. Yes, exactly right.
You bring a great point, though, because even with the Caine Mutiny, I could just say, "Oh, this is a classic, Humphrey Bogart," and be done with it. Believe me, I'm going
right
in
because
critically.
the pressure would be to do that.
Exactly, that would be the easy way out. Be right. Yeah, you got to watch it. You know what I mean?
Just be like everyone else.
But seriously, that's the same type of scrutiny, and again, it's always with the objective: what is worth your time, and hopefully saving you some time.
Yeah, definitely. And I think you saved us a decent amount of time on this one here, Ben. But hey, we thank you, Vin, for stopping by. We'll see you next week. For everyone listening here at home, we're going to go through it one more time. We have Easter Parade with a 67%. The Caine Mutiny with a 39, Soylent Green with a 46, Come On with an 81, and Moonfall with the oh-so-great 14%. We thank you so much for listening, folks, and we'll see you next time on the Daily Ratings Podcast. If you enjoyed the podcast, if you would, give us a good rating or tell a friend about us. If you're wondering if a film is worth a watch, or if you'd just like to see more movie ratings from Vince, be sure to stop by thedailyratings.com, where we have our ever-expanding catalog of films. Also, if you found value in the podcast or our site, become a producer and go to the donations tab on thedailyratings.com. You can donate whatever amount of value you feel you received from us. You'll get a producer mention on the next podcast episode, too. Because we're looking to build this into something large and great, but also be independent from those corporate sponsors. So we greatly appreciate any support from you all. So thanks so much, and we'll see you next time on the Daily Ratings Podcast.